Secretary Huerta, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Everett Roy,
Present.
Board Member Steve Banta, Roland Barrera,
Here.
Sylvia Campos is absent, Catherine Garcia, is absent, Jesse Gilbert,
Present.
Paulette Guajardo, absent, Gil Hernandez,
Here.
Roberto Hernandez is absent, Michael Hunter,
Here.
David Loeb, Jim Klein,
Here.
Mike Pesley, Connie Scott. Oh, Mr. Hernandez, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sorry about that. So he is present. Connie Scott? Judge Scott? No, she's absent.
She's up.
Dan Suckley?
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to make public comment? Okay. Would you please come forward?
Now,
If you could go ahead and state your name and address.
my name is Ann Foote. My address is 4217 Gulf Breeze Boulevard, Unit C. Comment.
Okay. Yes, go ahead,
Okay.
ma'am.
I live on North Beach. I finished construction of 9 units on Gulf Breeze Boulevard in 2017. I built these beach houses with others. I own 6 of 9 units built. Those units are at 4217 and 4209 Gulf Breeze. I reside in one of those units, and the other 5 are my long-term rentals. A while back, I spoke in favor at City Council for TIRZ funding for North Beach, and I was happy to hear when it passed. I've been wondering when it would start. I've watched other properties, including the RV park at north end of North Beach and the improvements at the breakers directly across the street from my lots occur, but did not realize that the improvements were funded in part by TIRZ number 4 until yesterday. It seems I was not one of those in the know of how to go about finding this TIRZ funding information. It took quite a while, and as a beginning point to learn more, it was suggested that I come to this meeting this morning. I come to you today as an individual citizen, property owner, and as a small business owner to ask assistance from this board to make it more accessible, or at least more easily accessible to individual citizens and property owners and small business owners like myself, the information about, TIRZ 4. I don't think I'm alone. Many of us are in need of city to provide outreach so that we better understand how we may apply for this specific funding source as individuals and business owners. A perfect venue for that member of city staff to share that information would be the North Beach Community Association, which meets Monday. Today, personally, I would appreciate someone from city staff to sit with me one-on-one to help me understand the specific criteria for each TIRZ funding opportunity and the application process so that I could possibly apply for it and qualify for it. Again, I know more individual citizens on North Beach would appreciate a visit from your staff, possibly to the Community Association, to help us all understand the specifics of the criteria to qualify and the specifics of how to apply so that we might possibly benefit for this much-needed funding source. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And can we get somebody from city staff to obtain your contact information? That way we can get together and assist you with that.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If there's no corrections, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Can we see Mr. Hernandez, please? Thank you, sir. All right.
Okay, the minutes pass. Thank you. Next, we have the financial report. There's no action required for this.
Good morning. Alma Casas, Interim Director of Finance. I will be presenting the financials for the 7 months ended April 30th. So we had a beginning fund balance at $233,000. Revenues year-to-date, $715,000. Expenditures for property improvement program, we had 16. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get that. Do we have them? There we go. Sorry about that. Oh. Let me get up. There we go. Okay. Oh, I need to get back. Okay. 1,000 revenues, 715,000. Expenditures, we have property improvement program of 16,187. Administrative services, 44,268, giving us an ending fund balance at April 30th of 887,857. Our outstanding commitments and expenditures are 486,127, giving us an available for commitments balance of 401,730. Commitments, so we anticipate at the end of this year we'll have 517,742 as our available estimated balance. Moving on to our project-specific development commitments, we have Las Casitas del Mar at 229,883. North Beach Living Initiative commitments, Las Casitas del Mar at 140,000. And then the property improvement commitments, we have a grand total of 128,564, which are for the breakers, condominiums, and Puerto del Sol RV Park. North Beach infrastructure improvements, we have Puerto del Sol RV Park at 217,563. And that concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions? Seeing that there's no questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no executive session today, so we'll go on to our first agenda item. It's a motion authorizing amendment to develop reimbursement agreement with the Date Tree Holdings, LLC, for improvements to the property located at 4606 Gulf Breeze Boulevard.
Good morning, Board Chairman, Interim Assistant City Manager Heather Holbert. This is one of our development agreements that we do have in place for the TIRZ number 4. This is for construction of the townhome apartment units with Casita Del Mar. And as the developer has gotten into the process, one of the commitments that was required within the contract was to raise the lots in that area. What they are finding as they're going through the process is that unfortunately, if the developer were to raise those lots, none of the other ones around them are planning on raising, and so then we create an inequity. We've walked through that, and they can still achieve what is needed as far as the floodplain and the in the velocity zone by moving forward with a design that was already proposed with having parking underneath and the living units up high. And so the developer is asking to remove that requirement to raise the lots because it's going to create, like I said, that inequity. And I know that we've had some challenges on North Padre Island where we've got different lots at different sizes that can flood, actually cause flooding with those surrounding lots. So the developer is here to speak a little bit more to that if there's any questions. But that is the request today, is to remove the requirement to raise the lots and just achieve what is needed by continuing to have the living units up on that above the parking areas.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, any questions?
I have some questions. I have a question. I know that that requirement comes from a drainage study that was done and a drainage plan that was developed that assumed that everybody would have to raise their lots.
Exactly.
I was wondering if there had been any discussion at the staff level about the fact that it's inordinately expensive for a private developer to build with this, and in their discussions with their neighbors, all their neighbors said, no, we're not going to do that. Has there been any discussion in staff about whether the drainage plan needs to be heavily modified to account for non-participation?
Sure. I am not an engineer, and I cannot speak to the drainage plan per se. This is a very good point, and we can definitely take that in consideration, communicating with other staff on that who created that drainage plan.
Yeah, can I comment on that as well? So Commissioner Loeb, our engineer of record is here, who's working on our drainage study on North Beach, Scott Harris from LAN. We know that many parcels are developed already on North Beach, and we don't expect them to obviously be elevated. And so that's the case for this property. Properties surrounding it are already developed, and so to elevate this property would cause flooding in these other properties. Scott Harris is here today and can speak more to it if you'd like.
No, I mean, I just wanted to, I mean, I think my first question she answered, which was they're still complying with the V-zone requirements, so they're lifting in piers, and that's kind of been the traditional development pattern. And I just wanted to make sure to kind of bring up that point that it looks like, I think when that plan first started, it was driven by a fairly small number of property owners, and now we're kind of seeing that maybe the other property owners don't agree with that path forward, and I just wanted to encourage you all to remember that and take that into account before streets start getting elevated or things like that, is it may create some unforeseen consequences. Thanks.
Yeah, also just for the record, so Scott Harris with LAN is also, he's not only is he working on the linear drainage canal design, but he's studying all elevation on North Beach. We had some residents that wanted to elevate their properties. So he's checking to see what is the appropriate elevation level for each of the parcels on North Beach. This one is compliant with the elevation requirement of about 4.5 feet.
Okay.
And so it's in compliance.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
sir.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think some of that discussion about raising elevation 6.5 feet, and Peter or Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was involved in when we were discussing the possibility of having a navigable canal along that area of North Beach. Is that not
Yeah,
correct?
so it's the navigable canal plus, but also that pertains to the linear canal.
Yeah.
And so the engineering is still similar, which is that the land has to slope into the canal for positive drainage from rain events into the canal. What Scott's studying now, though, is at what level for each lot, and it'll go lot by lot, because some of the lots are already developed, as we know. But ultimately, that is the goal with the linear canal as well, which is a sloping into the canal for rainwater runoff.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Actually, I'd like to hear directly from Scott on this, and saying, because, I mean, the whole reason for this whole drainage plan
Right.
was we needed to elevate these things. So I want to hear it specifically, because this was your plan, Peter.
Right, and
So
Scott
I
will
want to
speak
make
to it.
sure that you know, we're not shooting ourselves in the foot here by not requiring any kind of elevation. So, Scott,
Yeah, and
let's
can I
hear
just
from, let's hear
correct-
from the horse's mouth.
Right, Councilman, I recommended the plan with consultant advice. Ultimately, City Council approved it, so it's not, it's our plan. It's the city's plan, not mine necessarily. But Scott?
Hold
Yeah.
on, hold on. Peter, this was a recommendation from staff.
Right. That's what I
This
said.
plan to go with this linear canal.
Right.
And so, when I say it's your plan, this was a plan that was recommended by staff.
That's what I
Okay,
said.
so don't give me this snarky remark about this is our plan.
It's the
Okay, so
community's plan,
Scott, please,
Right,
please.
it's the community's plan, Councilman.
Councilman, City Manager, Scott Harris, 362 Merrill, LAN. We're the consultant hired to look at North Beach drainage. I think everything that the city manager said is correct. And then even Councilman Pusley's comment about the study that we did 2 to 3 years ago was, it was wrapped around a different type of project at that time. Ultimately, what we intended in there when we mentioned the 6.5 elevation is that there are properties on North Beach that would have to be raised to that ultimate elevation, but that would be the ultimate elevation. It was always intended that we'd go back, we'd look at, we'd do a more detailed analysis of the area, what I'm calling, say, a master grading plan, where we look at elevations at each parcel. And in this particular case, for this particular development, the elevations are roughly 4.5. They could possibly be raised to 5, maybe like 6 inches of fill work there, but they should not be raised to elevation 6.5 because it would adversely affect their neighbors. So that's the work that I'm doing currently.
Okay, this was supposed to be in conjunction with changing the elevations of the roads as well, right? So you can actually drain into the canal.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't raise the property, how do you, I mean, you can't take the street all the way down to sea level. How do you propose to do this?
Are you talking about the roads?
Right.
Like Gulf Breeze or Surfside, Timon?
Correct.
Yeah, there's the roads, the proposed elevation for the roads vary across the cross-section. So in that particular area, the roads will be recommended roughly about 4.5 to 5, a little bit lower than the property.
Okay, but the property's at 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
How's it going to drain?
The center line of the road, there's a slope on the center line of the road, then you have a ditch on the side that's lower. So the property drains into the ditch, so the road doesn't have to be 1-2 feet lower than the property. The center line of the road is set close to the height of the property. The property slopes down to a ditch on the side of the road. The ditch is lower. It's not the center line of the road.
Okay, so tell me, just on a normal process, we don't necessarily have our homes at the top, matching the center line of a road, correct? It's usually higher than that.
Yeah, and for North Beach,
what's that normal?
North Beach is, as you know, it's very flat. You're not going to get a whole bunch of relief, a whole bunch of elevation. You're not going to see a bunch of difference between property lines and streets. The streets are going to be about 6 inches below on the sides of the streets.
Okay, so on a normal basis, a home should be how much higher than the street?
Let's
just say for our normal standards, if we were building a house today,
Mm-hmm.
let's say on the south side, what would the difference be?
I can't speak for the south side and what that difference would be.
Okay.
I don't know.
On the north side, let's say the northwest, in the Cal Allen, what would the?
Yeah, Councilman, these are site-specific questions that you're asking
What
me.
I'm trying to say is that we're looking at from the perspective of, I don't want to treat, North Beach in a way that they're going to have problems in the future. Our whole plan was based on what you had described with the drainage plan of elevating areas up to 6.5 feet so that they can drain properly. And that was kind of the whole reason for not doing the navigable canal, because we were gonna have to do all these elevations. But even with this linear canal, or whatever, linear park with the canal,
Linear canal.
it's gonna have to be you're still gonna have to have some aspect of drainage here. So I like I said, I don't wanna, I don't have an issue with how they're building the elevation of the homes, but I mean, the overall drainage plan is an issue. I think what you need to do is bring to us what the overall drainage plan is for North Beach. so
That's
we can
always
see-
been my
So we
intent.
can see it
Yeah.
on an individual basis of where that goes.
Board Member Hernandez, if I could interject, I think that's part of what they said that he's doing, is that he's working on that study, and I think. it would
Okay,
be
but we're
advan-
making this decision now for
But we're making
this
it-
particular property, right?
Right.
Without having understanding of the whole drainage. So.
Right, and
Yeah, Councilman, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Go
but so
ahead.
Scott's doing two things. One, we awarded the contract, what was it, how many million? Council awarded the contract to LAN to do the engineering design work of the linear canal. Recently, we asked for an amendment to his contract to do a parcel by parcel elevation assessment because there was some bridge dirt that some property owners wanted to use. And we didn't know what's the appropriate height for individual lots, as you were just asking, Councilman. So he's doing that now. What he knows is that this lot is at sufficient height, and it would not have an adverse effect to approve this. Is that correct, Scott?
Yeah, the
approve this
current,
agenda
the
item.
current elevation is roughly 4.5 on this particular lot. Our grading plan will recommend an ultimate elevation of roughly 5 for this particular lot.
Okay.
So,
So you are,
The-
you are elevating it to 5.
yes, but that's our recommendation. It doesn't have to be, this item on the agenda right here is for whether or not it should be raised to 6.5, which, in my opinion, the work that I'm doing, it should not be raised to 6.5 because it would adversely affect. The 6.5 number came from our study we did 2.5 years ago, and it's the ultimate elevation. Every area, every block has to be considered and looked at in a more site-specific way so we don't adversely affect neighbors.
Right.
We can't just blanket, say, 6.5 across North Beach. It's, number one, it's not achievable, it can't be done, and number two, it will affect properties that are already developed there.
Okay, so your
member,
recommendation,
I've got-
his recommendation is to go to 5 feet, correct?
You'll see in the work that I delivered to council as part of my contract, that site right there at elevation 5, recommended maximum elevation at that site, that block there, elevation 5. Right now, it's at 4.5.
Okay, I will make that recommendation as an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Pusley.
Okay, yeah, that was gonna be my comment. I made a motion to support not having this property at 6.5 feet. But if it should be 5 feet, then our recommendation today should include that, should it not, Mr. Zedoni?
What's that, Councilman? Sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Should our motion today basically state that this property should be raised to what Scott is telling us?
Yeah.
Which is, it needs to come up another 6 inches?
And
What-
I'm not familiar with the development that is, I literally just walked in today to listen. So I'm not familiar, and I don't know about the gentleman's development on
What
that
you get for
site.
showing up to the meeting early.
Yes. And I'm prepared to speak for my work that's ongoing, but I'm assuming that there's hardscape, there's driveways, he's gonna end up putting some fill dirt for a driveway or whatever into that site that will ultimately be at that elevation that we're recommending anyway. But I can't speak for the development that's
Okay,
going on.
all right. Heather, you jumped up like you have an input here, so.
The developers asked to, that we totally remove the requirement for that and not put it at a specific height. As Scott says, when we have the developer and he can speak to it, he does have plans, but he's not planning on necessarily increasing it to that 5 feet.
So I'm gonna leave my motion the
Okay.
same, because at some point, the developer is gonna bring his development to this council for approval, and at that time, he will have had to have gone through the staff and talked about what the elevation should ultimately be. Is
He'll
that
have to go
not-
through development. I don't know that it's necessarily going to come back to council for consideration. It'll have to go through all the plating process and through development
Yeah,
services.
and at
Yes.
that time, they'll determine what the correct elevation
Yes.
should be.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
just had-
I'm not gonna change my motion.
I had
Okay.
one question.
Sure.
So in this particular case, this property's on pier and beam, right?
Yeah, it is elevated, yes.
It's elevated.
Yes.
So when we have a property that's on pier and beam, when we have a property that's on pier and beam as opposed to one that's on a foundation, do we take into consideration, that, the actual, I know that the bottom floor has to be a breakaway, but how do we look at that in difference?
So I'm not as versed on the development service standard. I know that you know, like I said, the developer can speak to a little bit of that, and I'm not sure if you've got.
Sir, would you like to?
I can address that a little bit.
And address that?
Yeah, so, North Beach is.
Be the developer, I'm sorry.
No, oh, I'm sorry. I mean, I can address it or the developer can, but, I was on the North Beach Task Force and I've spent a lot of time looking at the development over there. So every area of the city has a flood zone that is established, by FEMA. And we have to enforce that in order to, keep, insurance rates low and to provide homeowner and business owner access to the federal flood control pool. And so what that generally says is in each area of town, there's a minimum elevation that each property in that area must have. So on the south side, for instance, that's usually 1 or 2 feet. On North Beach, it's 14 feet. And so there's no way that you can accomplish it on North Beach with land grading. And so that's why you see everybody elevating. And so, I mean, I didn't mean to get into this big of a conversation about it, but I would say, let's approve this, let Scott do his work, but when Scott comes back to you with his work, I would have a conversation with the property owners on North Beach and try to get a read on how feasible it will be to get them to elevate it to that necessity. Because traditionally in this community, we have done, you know, in a flat community, you basically have two choices on where the floodwater goes. It either goes on the lots or goes in the street. Pretty much everywhere in town, we've made the strategic decision, and it's a policy decision, that it should go in the street, stay there until it can drain off. North Beach, historically, it has actually been on the lots. If you look, the streets are elevated on North Beach. That has been because in previous times when there's been a rain event, they have understood that there's nowhere for the water to go, and they would rather be able to access the street rather than be able to have the lots high and dry. Since all the properties have to be elevated anyway, there's very little danger, except in a hurricane, of the property itself flooding or the habitated part. So, I mean, that would be my suggestion, is you all have a discussion about whether that canal plan or the inverting it and having people drain into the street rather than the street drain into the lots is feasible, with some data on how much work actually has to get done. So.
Okay. Thank you. Are there
I have a question.
any other questions?
That's Mr. Hernandez on the phone.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, virtually.
Yes, I'm hearing you all talk about how y'all want to do things, and have, Mr. Harris, have you considered the erosion? I mean, I don't know how y'all going to build this to where maybe it won't erode, but from what I've seen from Mother Nature, the way whenever she decides to give us, you know, turmoil, there's always a lot of erosion. Have y'all taken this into consideration?
Yeah, every drainage analysis that we do, we look at the velocities within the ditches, within the canals. We look at erosion across properties, and we calculate what that erosion would be, and then we put in protective measures to counter that erosion, whether it be seeding, sodding. There's several different measures to counter erosion, which would be included in design.
Well, I think that, you know, that sounds good, but I think from the history of North Beach, we've had lots of problems with the erosion, keeping the sand in that area. But that's just my concern that I had, and I just want to bring it up to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, are there any other questions? Board member?
I know I'm late, but can I hear just a little bit? I know David jumped in before the developer. Can we just hear from the developer himself? Please, do we have time?
I will make it quick because you've taken a lot of time on this. I thank you. I'm Gordon Awesome. I live over at 1 Virginia Hills Drive in Corpus Christi. And we have plans ready to go, been reviewed by the building department, engineered, and Voss Engineering's waiting for the decision here today to change my grading plan. And the reason I'm making this request is the original intent to raise this site to 6.5 feet above sea level is contrary to FEMA recommendations for adjoining structures. They have a technical bulletin number 5 that says you have to consider flow diversion, wave reflection, and wave run-up. And if we have a retaining wall about this high next to our neighbors, that's going to, in a hurricane flood, cause wave run-up and flow diversion and create more damage to adjoining buildings. And that's why we want to not raise it 3.5 feet. We are going to raise this site so it has positive drainage to the street and to the ditches and the drainage. So I wanted to clarify that for you. That's why we're asking this. It would harm the adjacent property owners to comply with that 6.5-foot rule. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, we have a presentation and discussion on the proposed fiscal year 2023-24 tax increment reinvestment zone budget.
Good morning, Chairman and board members. Eddie Houlihan with the Office of Management and Budget. I'm going to go over the proposed budget with you here. All right.
Mr. Chairman, before Eddie gets started, I'd just like to make a statement. You know, in going back and looking at this agenda item we just voted on, Peter, you know, typically when we're going to talk about engineering kind of things like this, we have a recommendation attached to the agenda item from our engineering department, and I didn't see that in this particular presentation. So I would just say in the future, if we're going to talk about engineering kind of things, we need to have a recommendation from our engineering department. I just wanted to
Okay,
make that.
yeah, we'll do that, Councilman. Thank you.
Okay, this is a budget overview from a high level, moving from left to right. The first column there is the FY22 actual. These are audited numbers. Then the next 3 columns are the FY23 budget and the current projections on what that amounts are going to be at the end of the year. And then finally, the far right column is the FY24 proposed budget. So at the end of 22, we ended a fund balance with $233,231. And currently, we estimate to end fiscal year 23 with the $857,000 fund balance. And then the projection for 24 with $1,120,000 in revenues and $297,000, almost $298,000 expenditures to end fiscal year 24 with $1,679,000 in fund balance. And a little more detail on the revenues. The revenues are based on the preliminary projections. So in this particular area, the net taxable value went from a certified value in 23 of $181,545,000. And the preliminary values for the TIF 4, $200,239,000, or an increase of $18,694,000. It's about a 10.3% increase. So the detail here, the city projected revenue for fiscal year 24, $578,702, and then the other 2 entities, Del Mar, $248,909, in Nueces County, $269,613, and then the projected interest income of a little over $23,000 for total revenues of $1,120,275. Then on the expenditure side, FY24, a small amount in there for the management and professional services of the TIF, $5,000. The North Beach project specific, $15,326. That is the Las Casitas Del Mar project. The infrastructure program of $108,782. That would be the Puerto del Sol RV Park. And then the North Beach Living Initiative is also the Las Casitas Del Mar. And then finally, the property improvement program of $72,376. That is for the Breakers condominium and also the Puerto del Sol RV park. And finally, an amount there for the general fund support of $87,152 for a total expenditure of $297,969. I'm going to let Heather talk to you a little bit about the proposed expenditures.
Sure. And this is, this TIRZ is relatively new. And so we have had limited resources to be able to do programs through the TIRZ. Now that we are building increment on the island, we want to propose coming with a business improvement program. If the board is interested in moving forward with something like that, we would then provide more details on what we propose that to be when we come back in July. We do have a few programs that we already have adopted that we've awarded to different projects, but we wanted to come forward with a possible business improvement program that could benefit some of the businesses that are already on the island, looking at possible type, signage improvements, facade improvements, things like that. And so we wanted to see if there was an appetite for that from the board. If so, then, like I said, we can move forward with putting that program together, bringing that back and proposing it. But we wanted to see what the appetite was for that.
I'd like to say that, even based on public comment, I definitely think there's an appetite. Each individual there and businesses, there's a lot of concerns about, we've heard it today, drainage and elevation and making sure that their properties are protected. So I'm for it. Is there anyone else that would like to make comment? Board Member Hunter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm for it too. I think it's a great idea, but I would like to hear from our two North Beach everyday individuals, see what they think, and maybe they could give us some insight.
Sure.
I mean, they're there every single day. They're taking care of it for us.
From the aquarium standpoint, we're seeing an increased traffic pattern on North Beach, and with some expansion plans that we have coming, I'm concerned that road access and parking will hamper our development at some point. We're maxing out on parking right now every week and day from June through July. So I think some sort of overall comprehensive plan would be well appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo the same. Steve Banta from the USS Lexington, and what we're seeing is after COVID, tourism is booming back in South Texas, which is great. What we're talking about here with the TIRZ is that over the years we're going to be improving North Beach. That's going to bring more people. That's what we want. That's what people say, it's a good problem to have. Well, the problem is, like Jesse was talking about parking. We've had pretty small parking lots for years, and it's been sufficient at the USS Lexington, but we anticipate with future growth that some type of community and a city-supported access for whether it's a parking garage or something is going to have to happen, that this thought is going to have to go into how the roads are done, what kind of parking plan is in there, because not only is traffic going to improve and increase over many years looking forward at the Lexington and the aquarium, but more businesses are going to be opening in North Beach, and they're going to have the same issues. So this is a good opportunity to be starting this discussion, and the TIRZ is a great place to be having that. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any other input? Board Member Pusley?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Heather, so where will this $300,000 come from?
From the TIRZ.
From the TIRZ. So is this built into what Eddie's presentation?
It is not. We wanted to understand the thoughts of the board to move forward with this. If it is, if we do get direction to move forward, then when we bring it back in July, we would include that in there.
So is this going to be a study that we would propose, or
No, this would be a program, so similar to like what we've done in downtown, where we've gone through and we have programs that businesses can participate in for specific reasons. We are aware of some of the needs, and we will definitely have more conversations with our partners that are on North Beach to understand what those needs are.
Okay, when you say program, that still means that we're gonna have to have some type of, we're gonna have to put something together. Somebody's gonna have to come to the council and make a presentation, or come to this board rather.
Yes.
And make a presentation as to what those improvements would look like.
Exactly.
Okay, and who would that be?
That would be either myself.
Staff? Or
Yes, it would be
We're
staff.
gonna go out and hire outside consultants, or?
No, this would be staff.
Well, I mean, that's true. I mean, they know a little bit about what their particular business is, but this is something we're talking about that's gonna cover the whole, North Beach area.
Exactly. It would be the economic development staff would look to see what we see as the needs, talking with the businesses that are down there, putting best practices in place. Where are those where are and develop a program, I guess.
Okay. As soon as Scott gets his, plan worked out, we'll all know what we need to do. Okay. Thank you.
Chairman,
Board
point
Member
of
Hernandez.
order. This wasn't on the agenda, right? It's not something we can vote on or discuss, right?
We're not, what it is, it's on the agenda for presentation and discussion on the proposed, well, that was on
On the budget.
the budget.
Yes.
That is correct. So this is a part of you're asking this $300,000 to be added.
If there's an appetite to move forward with it, if it is, then when we bring the budget back in July for recommendation to City Council, at that point, we'll include that in the budget and then bring that program back to the board for consideration.
But there's no action today.
Yes.
We won't-
Okay. Exactly.
This is not going to vote today. This is just open for discussion.
Discussion, and possibly, yeah.
That's correct.
Exactly.
So we can't even give a recommendation on something like this. This is not,
Yeah, I think right now it's just open for discussion to see if there's an interest
Yes.
to move forward.
okay.
Board Member Lowe.
Yeah, I think the business incentive is a great idea. I'd also add, I think, based on the public comment, working up a little marketing budget.
Yes.
So we can like send a postcard to all the vacant property owners, because, it's great going to the North Beach group, but we have to remember that that's all the people who are already engaged, and we have to figure out a way to maybe engage some of the other people. I know some of the stuff downtown got done by sending postcards to developers who had pulled building permits in similar places to downtown. The Cosmopolitan got built because we sent a direct mail piece to everybody who'd built an apartment complex in downtown Austin. So I'd just encourage you all to develop a budget and look at doing some of that, because if we already have these incentives but people don't know them, they won't get spent. So,
Yeah.
thanks.
And like I said, this is, we're only basically in year 3 of this TIRZ. And so, unfortunately, the first year we had the TIRZ, we actually had a decrease in property value. So we had negative money in the TIRZ. So we're just now getting to the point where we have money. And so moving forward with really fleshing out the plan for the TIRZ.
Okay, any
I
other?
just want to ask a question, please.
Yes, Board Member Hernandez?
Yes, I just want to make sure this will be done by staff.
Yes.
There's no plans to get any outside studies or counsel.
No, we're not proposing that we engage anyone from the outside or go into a professional services contract. This would be done by internal economic development staff in conjunction
Very
with
good.
our partners on the island.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing that there's no further questions, there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.